Here are 3 of my own observations as a Messianic Jew. All right. What I say is that with regards to specific revelation, right, and we're talking about when we're looking at the Bible, specific revelation, there are 2 types that I've come to understand. There's general revelation and specific revelation. General is kind of very broad, and we can see and understand what we know about God generically or generally from creation and from physics and from just from nature and things like that. But specifically, God revealed himself more specifically to a people group known as Israel. So that's what we would talk about regards to specific revelation. What I've observed is that without the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, without him articulating the progressive revelation of the TaNaKH leading into the Apostolic Scriptures, right, then Rabbinic Judaism of today has unwittingly become what I call fiercely and radically monotheistic. So they reject Trinity based on, in plain terms, and based on a lack of the Holy Spirit within them. As an institution, Rabbinic Judaism, by and large, rejects Jesus as the Messiah and therefore rejects the presence of the Holy Spirit within them personally. In other words, their position is outside the pale of a genuine relationship with God that is expressed in terms of believing in Jesus. And therefore, minus the power of the indwelling Holy Spirit, they're forcing themselves into a position of darkness and blindness. And take a look at this verse. 1 Corinthians 12:3 reads, quote, "Therefore, I want you to understand," Paul says, "that no one speaking in the Spirit of God ever says that Jesus is accursed." Then, of course, Rabbinic Judaism would agree that Jesus is accursed, or Jesus is someone who is not to be believed in, right? To be sure, many Rabbinic Jews don't even like to say the name Jesus, what they would call the J word, right? So they abstain from that. They avoid, they particularly train their children to avoid meeting Christians and having discussions with Messianic Jews for fear of the poisoning of the mind and corrupting of your theology as a Rabbinic Jew and things like that. So Paul says, no one speaking in the Spirit of God ever says Jesus is accursed. And then Paul continues and says, and no one can say Jesus is Lord, notice that part is in quotes, except in the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of God, Holy Spirit. So the way I understand this verse just briefly is that Paul is recognizing that this revelation that Jesus is one with the Father, that Jesus is kurios in the Greek, Jesus is kurios, that Jesus is Lord. Let me see, do I have the Greek pulled up? I don't have it pulled up. I'm trying to resist turning this into a heavy theological discussion. But just in the English, Jesus is Lord. Lord meaning he is the Lord not just of your life, but he is this one that the TaNaKH has referred to as Yahweh over 6,000 plus times in the Old Testament. Kurios is the Greek rendering of Yahweh from the Hebrew. So to say that Jesus is Lord carries some strong ontological implications to imply that Jesus is mystically and mysteriously one with the Father, right? To quote Yeshua's own words, I and the Father are one. Yeshua is somehow one with God in a way that can only be apprehended and therefore articulated and believed upon by the power of the Holy Spirit within a person. That is to say, unregenerate man is going to always and eventually fall short of being able to understand the nature of God and the nature of Messiah in his union with God hypostatically, because he, as an unregenerate person, has rejected the power of the Holy Spirit within him. So, in other words, if you're an unsaved individual, then you're going to reject the fullness of God, because it's only by the power of the Spirit that you can fully apprehend and then begin to articulate the inner nature of God and his triune nature. I think that's where part of the verse is alluding to. I can't say that that's the exhaustive explanation of the verse, but I certainly would support an interpretation that includes that particular perspective. And I think that that affects Rabbinic Judaism today, because Rabbinic Judaism is in a position of an unbelieving Judaism when it comes to faith in Messiah, which means their knowledge of God is superficial, and ultimately at the end of the day it's going to retroactively be counted as a non-knowledge of God. On Judgment Day, God is going to have to soundly reject Rabbinic Judaism, because they have soundly rejected His own revelation of Himself to mankind via His Son. The next